Just think about it for a second. The phone in your pocket, the car in your driveway, they're all powered by these little miracles, lithium-ion batteries. They're basically the invisible engines of our entire modern world. And it's amazing how they pack a ridiculous amount of power into such tiny spaces.
But here's the thing. All that power, all that energy density that makes them so useful also comes with a potential risk. So the big question we're going to tackle is, what actually happens when all that perfectly contained energy goes wrong? Let's dive into the science.
Okay, so to figure out why they fail, we gotta look inside, right? This X-ray shows you the basic setup. You've got the positive side, the cathode, and the negative side, the anode. But the really, really important part is that super thin layer sandwiched between them. It's called the separator. Its one and only job is to be a wall, to keep the positive and negative from ever touching. You gotta remember that separator because it's pretty much the hero of our story here. So what could possibly make this carefully balanced little system just completely break down? Well, it really boils down to a few key triggers. Some come from the outside world, and some, well, they start from deep inside the battery itself. Now, the causes can range from the really obvious stuff like, physically puncturing or crushing a battery to more sneaky things like extreme heat, just plain old aging, or electrical stress. But honestly, one of the most interesting causes actually starts before the battery ever even leaves the factory. Yeah, and what's so wild is just how small the problem can be at the beginning. I mean, during manufacturing, these microscopic metal particles, we're talking tiny bits of copper usually, can get trapped inside. Over many charge cycles, these little particles can actually dissolve into the electrolyte liquid and then reappear somewhere else, slowly building a tiny unwanted bridge that creates an internal short circuit. Electrical stress is another huge one. See, if you use the wrong charger, or if the battery's little computer brain, the battery management system, is faulty, you can force the voltage way past its safe limit. This causes something called lithium plating. Basically, instead of the ions flowing nice and smoothly, they start to pile up on the anode, forming these spiky, tree-like metal structures. We call them dendrites. And just like those little metal contaminants, these dendrites can grow long enough to poke right through that all-important separator. And bam, you've got that short circuit we've been talking about. So whether it's a puncture from the outside, a tiny defect from the factory, or one of those pesky dendrites growing on the inside, that first little short circuit is the spark. It's the one thing that can light the fuse on a much, much more dangerous process. And that process has a name. It's called thermal runaway. And really, it's just a fancy term for a positive feedback loop gone wild. Think of it like this. A little bit of heat causes a chemical reaction. That reaction creates more heat, which makes the reaction go even faster, which, you guessed it, creates even more heat. It's this vicious cycle that just feeds on itself, and once it really gets going, it is incredibly hard to stop. I actually found this quote from a Reddit user, and I love it because it just puts it so perfectly, so simply. It's a chain reaction. As soon as that battery gets past a certain temperature, it starts feeding itself, and things just escalate, and they escalate fast. So let's trace the steps. It all kicks off the moment that separator fails. The second the positive and negative sides make direct contact, all that energy stored inside the battery suddenly has a wide open path to discharge all at once. And we're not talking about a slow drain, like when you're watching a video on your phone. No, this is an uncontrolled, basically instantaneous dump of all its energy. All that current flowing creates a massive, intense spike of heat right there inside the cell. That's our trigger. Now, this initial blast of heat kickstarts a bunch of other chemical reactions. And these reactions produce even more heat. The electrolyte liquid starts to break down, releasing flammable gases. And if that wasn't bad enough, when it gets really hot, the cathode material itself can start to release pure oxygen. So now you've got a sealed metal can that is actively producing its own fuel and its own oxygen. Not a good combo. And this is what all that chaos looks like from the inside. It's an incredible animation from a CT scan, and it shows the layers of the battery just twisting, deforming, and collapsing as that thermal runaway takes over. The entire internal structure is literally destroying itself from the inside out. So you've got more heats, more gas, which creates more and more pressure inside that sealed battery case. Eventually, something has to give. The casing just can't hold it anymore. The battery will vent all those hot, flammable gases, which can then burst into flames, or in the absolute worst-case scenario, cause a pretty serious explosion.
Okay, I know that sounds absolutely terrifying. But the good news, the really good news, is that batteries almost always give off warning signs before things get that bad. So knowing what to look for, that's your best line of defense.
First, just use your eyes. Is your phone case or laptop starting to bulge or swell up? That is a huge red flag. It means gas is building up inside. Use your sense of touch. Is it getting unusually hot to the touch? Not just warm, but hot? That's another major warning sign. And then trust your other senses too. A weird kind of sweet or chemical smell, any hissing or popping sounds, or obviously any leaking fluid. All of that means you need to stop using that battery right away.
Of course, the best strategy of all is just prevention. I mean, there are some really simple, concrete things you can do to dramatically lower the risk of any of this ever happening in the first place.
All right, let's run through the playbook. Super simple stuff. First, do use the official charger that came with your device. It's designed to talk to the battery and not overdo it. And on that note, don't use those cheap, sketchy, uncertified chargers you find online. Just don't. If a battery is swollen or damaged, do replace it. Don't just, ignore it. Oh, and here's a big one a lot of people forget. If you carry loose batteries, keep them in a case. You do not want them touching your keys or coins in your pocket. That's just a short circuit waiting to happen.
Now, if the worst actually happens and a battery starts to fail, you see smoke, you hear hissing, it's swelling up fast, your safety is the only thing that matters. So step one, get away from it. The fumes can be really toxic. If, and this is a big if, only if it's absolutely safe to do so, try to move the device to a non-flammable surface, like a concrete patio outside. But for any actual fire, just get yourself out and call for help immediately.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Look, lithium-ion batteries are a genuinely world-changing technology, but they absolutely demand our respect and our understanding. As we build a future that's going to run on this incredible power source, the real challenge for all of us, from the engineers designing them to you and me using them every day, is to make sure that with all this great power comes great safety. So the question becomes, what's the next big innovation that will make them even safer? That's what everyone is working to answer.